Welcome everyone to another episode of Cloud Conversations. Peter Rising here. It's great to be back on the show and alongside my good friend Rue Campbell. It's been a little while, hasn't it, Rue? How's things going with you?
It has, yeah. I honestly, and I think I said this to you before we jumped on the call here. I'm currently dying of allergies. I don't know what's happened to me, if I've just become allergic to something all of a sudden, but my eyes are watering up, skin is feeling horrible. So if you see me reaching for the box of tissues while we're recording, I'll try and hit the mute button before
Ah,
I
but you
deafen
sound
everyone.
nice and clear anyway. Little
I
suggestion
appreciate
for
that.
you.
Thank you.
If it continues, maybe get some antihistamines. They might help you get something like a cetirizine. Because I take them and they help me a lot.
I have already thrown the kitchen sink at this thing, so
Have you?
we'll
Oh dear.
just go through the medicine cabinet and anything I could get my hands on. But anyway, enough about me. I've got the pleasure this episode of introducing our guest, Matt Zorich, who, let me get this right, Matt, because we spoke about this before the show, who is now a principal cybersecurity operations specialist, which is a bit of a mouthful. And he runs the Learn Sentinel blog. And how I discovered Matt was through the hashtag that you've currently got going on Twitter, which is 365 days of KQL. And it seems an awful lot of people are very interested in that and very appreciative of the work you're putting out there. So welcome to the show. How are you?
Thanks, guys. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. Yeah, the new job title is definitely a mouthful. I always joke that IT job titles often seem like completely made up and they don't make any sense out of the current organization you're in. But yeah, I work in cybersecurity in like a mining and energy company here in Perth, Western Australia. We're obviously a Sentinel customer. And yeah, I found a bit of a niche there writing KQL, which is it's kind of used more and more definitely around the place. And yeah, it's something I just kind of love doing. It's love cybersecurity and kind of visualizing queries and things like that for sure. And it has it's kind of taken off more than I expected it to for sure.
Awesome. No, well, it's the way I look at it is it's one of those things that it's kind of new, right? When you look at like you've got maybe like 22 years of the Active Directory's been around, and you've kind of got 22 years worth of enterprise IT, but KQL sitting there right at the end of it, right? Where we look at Sentinel, we look at Azure. There's still a lot of maturing to go there, and it seems that you're helping a lot of folk make that jump into it, right? And I guess I'm wondering, is that where the idea of the 365 days of KQL came from?
Yeah, so I guess where it actually started was just knowing my own personality is that if I kind of committed to this, I would have to finish it because I'm just kind of driven that way. I wouldn't want to let myself down. And why I kind of started it is we started using log analytics a few years ago, not really in a security context, more for performance and things like that that you can also use it for. And when I was Googling for queries or trying to find help, I found a lot of the stuff out there was written for performance or Azure Monitor and things like that. And that I was looking at these queries and going, this doesn't mean anything to me, CPU performance, and it may as well be hieroglyphics, right? I'm just like this. I don't know how to convert this into security speak, and something would be interested from a security point of view. So I thought, look, I'll start writing some queries mostly for myself if people are interested, and just put that security kind of spin on it, really. My boss has a saying, which I'm sure he stole from somewhere, that kind of cybersecurity is a bit of a team sport, right? So you might be working in finance, you might be working in health, I work in mining and energy, but ultimately we're kind of fighting the same bad guys a lot of the time. You'll have your niche that's specific to your industry or your company, but phishing, credential theft, it's the same for us all, right? So I thought, if I put a query out there and someone blocks something, win for everyone, right? So, and then the other thing with the 365 days is that, like you guys would know, when you're writing a blog, you got to dig deep on one thing, and it takes you a while in between working. When you're writing just a query a day, you can kind of target it at what's topical. And when I fall asleep, that seems to be when the cyber world sets on fire. And then I wake up and there's something new to write a query about, or there's a new vulnerability, or Log4j comes along, and so then you can pump something out quickly and you help someone. So that's where it started. And I think we're 140 days or something in. So I assume I'll get there. I hope
Nice, good.
Yeah.
And so, are you ever stumped for ideas, or does it just keep coming and coming and coming?
Nah, not really, to be honest. Look, I have a filing system. I just email them to myself. So I've probably got up the next 100 basically written. Like, to be
Okay.
honest, they're just sitting there. But like I say, often something will come up that people are interested in. Like a few weeks ago, there was some really great research done on like OAuth phishing. So I did a few days on tracking down OAuth phishing, which is becoming really, really prevalent as users kind of learn to not put their username and password in places. So now there's always an interesting way to look at data, I think, as well. You know, there's things like passwordless or MFA or phishing. That's people are always interested in what that looks like, I think, in their tenant, definitely. So no writer's block as yet, touch wood.
I love the way you describe cybersecurity as a team sport as well, because I think that is so, so true. It's everybody's responsibility, it's everybody's concern within an organization, and trying to educate the whole business to that point can be very, very challenging. How do you go about doing that within your organization? Or is that challenging for you, or have you been able to break down some of those barriers and get people to understand the importance of it?
Yeah, look, we have, it's not my specific team, but we do have like a risk and education branch of cybersecurity that do and try and get out there, and you know, we'll do the phishing campaigns and things like that. They'll do a campaign about, you know, they'll litter USB drives around the office, and if you plug it in, it will pop up saying you should have maybe not plugged this in, and taken it to the, you know, very light messaging. And you know, we moved to passphrases at our organization a few years ago now, and you know, that was quite daunting for users. You go up to them and say, look, your password is going to be 15 characters long, and it's like, oh my, I'm never going to remember this, right? But then you're going to break it down and you say, well, just pick a few words, right? You don't need a exclamation mark, you don't need numbers, and most importantly, we're not going to make you rotate it every kind of 3 months, which has proven to not really help, because you know, Monday 10 becomes Monday 11, right? That's inevitably what happens with that, right? That's human nature, right? If you're gonna make people rotate it, they're just gonna, you know, lowest common denominator kind of thing. So it's definitely hard. And look, I think what I find is you need a mix of the technical controls and the soft education. You can do the phishing training and things like that, and you're ultimately not going to get to everyone because people have different capability, or they're not focusing that day, or for whatever reason you click on it. Look, everyone gets done at some point, so it's good to have the soft skills. And then you know, KQL Sentinel, we can see when people are clicking and who's the most targeted, and really cool stuff like that, and maybe reach out to them. And you know, have you signed up to anything silly lately, or all those kind of things.
Yeah, totally. And it's, to me, it's kind of a fine line as well, because back when I was working, I do consultancy now, but back when I was in internal IT, it felt like there was a kind of fine line between educating the users through stuff like phishing campaigns, but you don't want to embarrass them in a way. You know what I mean? You don't want to have to say, oh, you stupid person, you shouldn't have clicked this. It's like, it goes back to that thing that, well, it's a team sport. And it's like, well, yeah, they clicked it. Yeah, they shouldn't have. But were we doing everything we could in our position as defenders to make them aware of that, and then also stop real attacks getting through? You see it on Twitter. There's kind of, I can't believe I'm going to say this, like quote unquote victim blaming. You know what I mean? And it's kind of not as simple as that, I don't think.
Yeah, it does seem to be a bit of a religious war on InfoSec Twitter, whether phishing campaigns are useful at all, whether they're an entire waste of time, whether you say, you know, whether you need only education or only technical controls. And you know, the defense in depth kind of concept of, you know, users are going to click on them in time.
Yep.
I've got my hand up here.
Everyone has, right?
Everyone has.
Yeah. I fell for one the other week in our company. I'm ashamed to admit that's super embarrassing for me, but because we've got quite an aggressive compliance officer who there's a lot of. I'm always on the watch out for it, but just that one moment where you're busy, where you're stressed, where you're not focusing, and I know to look out for this stuff, for suspicious links and attachments and all that stuff. But there was an email come through which appeared to be from internal, and it was about a new initiative where you can praise your colleagues, that sort of thing, a new sort of reward scheme. And I opened the email, and that was it. It was boom, and I thought, "Oh, come on! I can't believe I've fallen for that." So now I've got to do some awareness training.
Got to do some training. That's it. Yeah. Look, it's kind of fun getting people within the cyber wider team or kind of the IT pro teams. I will say it's kind of fun picking those guys out, because they'll also go out of their way to, create an Outlook rule based on the headers of the phishing campaign company. So I think that's fair game. But the general business users, you're right. I don't think it makes a lot of sense to get into them, and for clicking on it, it happens, and it's more for them to know, look, you're not going to get fired. The cyber police aren't going to come and knock on your door. This is what you should have seen, and we're always there, right? Like, come and reach out. If something seems
to have awareness.
Yeah, that's it. It's about resilience, right, on every level.
Yeah, and I get, you kind of. I'm curious to what extent is your business kind of pushing forward for these things that, in Microsoft's terminology, they call it phishing resistant credentials. You know what I mean? So the passwordless, I guess MFA as well. They don't say fish proof; they say fish resistant, which is quite a different thing. But I'm just curious: is that something that you guys are also pushing for? Because passwordless, it seems to make a lot of sense, but there are some gotchas, some things that it's just not compatible with.
Yeah, so we're kind of looking at it, the early stages of it, for sure. Look, I use it myself, and some of the IT team and cyber team like testing with it. So, and it is a fantastic experience. There's various options. So the one we use is the Windows Hello for Business.
Yeah.
So if you sign on using your face or your fingerprint, or like your laptop at that point essentially becomes your MFA device. Your creds and things are stored securely on a TPM, and then the magic signs you on to Azure AD, and you're into Outlook, and you're into SharePoint and Teams and all this cool stuff without you really knowing. I think where this passwordless hopefully takes off compared to some other ones, like where you've got tokens or security keys and you've got issues of using them. Something like Windows Hello for Business is both more secure and like a really great user experience. And I think in cybersecurity, often those two don't intersect. Cybersecurity can be seen as like the Department of No. So when you come along with something that's both more secure, user is just like, I'm happy to sign in with my face or my fingerprint, and the magic just works, and they're not really aware that that's actually a strong auth challenge.
Yeah,
you got to jump on that, right? So we're going to get there. Like any company, we've got legacy, we've got a big on-prem Active Directory footprint, right? So we've got to work out how that all sits together. But yeah, we're really keen to push on with that, definitely.
Those hardware tokens that you mentioned, the YubiKeys and the like, I've not ever really seen any real adoption of those within the customers that I've worked with. And the only time I've ever really recommended them is for break glass accounts for and lock them away somewhere. So your emergency access accounts to bypass conditional access. Have you come across wider use of those, or
so we don't use them widely either, but we have some niche use cases for sure for those kind of things. Like we've got parts of our network where users aren't allowed mobile phones for whatever reason, because we're a mining company, so we've got an operational technology kind of arm and things like that. I think the other thing I find personally, having kind of trialed one, the laptop I use, like a lot of laptops now, it's got pretty much one USB port on it.
Yeah.
When I'm in the office, that's plugged into like a dock that's built in into my monitor. I don't know how that magic works, and that powers my laptop. It does the other screen, and then I plug all my headset and things into my monitor. So it wouldn't be really practical for me to plug a key in. And I understand there's some ones with NFC capability, but not many laptops in the market have NFC readers kind of built in. So I think we're seeing something similar to you, that not wide adoption of it. You certainly hear of companies like big tech companies that are 100% that way, and that would be awesome. Probably depends on kind of the makeup of your users as well and how technical they are. You know, a company like a Google or Microsoft is going to be skewed to technical people compared to, you know, health or other kind of environments, I think.
Yeah, because you get, I'm the same. I've seen it in scenarios where, like, call centers, where, you know, staff aren't maybe allowed to use their mobile phones as well. I've seen it there as well. But like you said, it's a little bit less practical. But I use it for conditional access, where you can set up a free Duo account and you can actually have a separate MFA service for if Azure MFA ever goes down to get in. But yeah, call centers, things like that, it's useful for. But also, I guess, you know, there's some perhaps understandably so, there are some users who are resistant to maybe load an authenticator app onto their own personal phone, right? And if you're not giving out corporate phones, then there is that question mark of, well, why should I? You know what I mean? So they're good for that kind of edge case scenario, but phone is so much more practical. You know, being able to, you know, do the authentication from your Apple Watch and everything.
Yeah,
It goes back to that thing
definitely.
you said, where you get the security, but it's so easy. You know what I mean?
Oh, that's
So
it. Yeah. Those, I always say you got to jump on those kind of things, and we get users with the same kind of privacy issues, and I think that's. I always say I think that's actually quite a good thing. I think users taking an interest in their data privacy is like ultimately a good thing, right? It'd be nice if they installed the Authenticator app or Duo or Ping or whatever you use, but like I don't mind them, users kind of challenging that and thinking about their data privacy in their personal life as well. So we have, we use Duo for our main one. We do some fallback to Microsoft MFA, and they've got kind of the token, I don't know, they remind me of the old secure ID RSA kind of things, where you can just push the button and it gives you a code. You don't need any mobile coverage. You don't need anything like that. So we have cases where we use those as well for those users, or some users just decide, you know, I just won't check my email from home. So, which isn't,
fair enough.
If you want to, that's fine. I wish I could get away with that, but good on them as well, right?
Yeah. No, I don't actually do work email when I'm not at work. It's because my company I work for, we have no BYOD policy. We just completely forbid it. Which when I started was kind of startling. But honestly, not getting work email on my phone is life changing.
I got to admit, I don't. I have the capability to, but I choose not to, just to get that kind of balance going.
Rue, do you have a business mobile? Did it provide one to you?
I don't. I think I could get one if I really wanted to. You know, back when we would have to travel a lot, it would have made sense. But these days, I don't really think it makes sense. If someone wants to reach me, I'm not hard to find. You know, so
there's lots of ways, isn't there?
Yeah, that's right. But yeah, no BYOD for us. And I guess, you know, if I think about that, and I think back to you mentioned you had that kind of, you know, you're still dealing, you're a big organization, right? And you've still got on-prem Active Directory and all that kind of stuff. Do you think the whole 100% cloud thing is that realistic for an organization of your scale? Will it be realistic at some point? What's your position there?
Look, so I'm obviously not privy to any of Microsoft's grand plans or anything. They've obviously changed their kind of what's driving them, and they want you to use Azure AD and Azure and things like that for sure. I think on-premise Active Directory, and that's kind of that's where I started in IT. I think it's going to be around for a long time. I don't think there's going to be a lot of features added to it from Microsoft's point of view. I think it's been a long time since they've added any features already, really, that it's kind of in like an extended maintenance mode. Look, we'd love to move as much as we can to the cloud, and you know, we're heavy users of Azure and Azure AD for sure. Whether we'll ever get rid of on-prem AD, I'm not entirely sure. I think if we do, it'll be a long time down the track. I'd say 10 plus years realistically, just like you say, it's AD is just everywhere, right?
Yeah.
It's wherever you
Mm.
walk into, unless if you were to start a business tomorrow, I think born in the cloud completely makes sense. I think
Yeah.
with like Azure AD and Microsoft Endpoint Manager, I'm going to offend an Intune person if I get the name wrong. So I think if you're starting today and Microsoft 365 and Teams and all that stuff, like amazing for sure.
Yeah.
If you've got
Mm.
20, 15 years of legacy sitting there, I think it's a lot to unwind
Mm.
for sure. So
It's more challenging, isn't it? More challenging.
yeah, definitely. And while it's working as well, like Microsoft's provided some really great stuff around the fringes to make it work. You've got things like Azure AD App Proxy.
Mm.
If you've ever had a look at that, that's kind of a secret
It's a hidden
nugget.
gem, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, it's just sitting there, and that can kind of convert new stuff to old stuff. You can go from like an OAuth or a SAML to Kerberos and put conditional access in the middle of it, and they're doing some things like that. But yeah, I think we're going to struggle to ever get rid of it, but that's okay. We can manage it for sure.
Yeah.
There's like I say, there's like Active Directory security is like almost like a niche within cybersecurity itself. Like people have made a lot of money, and there's some cool products just dealing with just AD.
Yeah.
For sure.
And that's just for the now, isn't it, as well? You don't know what innovations around the corner, sort of 5 years down the line. Microsoft, after a few more ignites, they might have come out with something that's going to blow that away and make it easier for larger organizations who have that legacy dependency to make that jump. Because I think Microsoft, from their point of view, from their side of it, I know that they don't want to be in the on-premises business any longer than they have to be. They're desperate to get out of it.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, they want that recurring revenue.
Yeah,
It's all about the monthly subscriptions.
why sell it to you once when they can get you per user per month? It's kind of the Netflix model for identity, right?
Yeah, for sure. And so I got to pick your brains about Sentinel now.
Sure.
Because I guess I'll preface all this by saying, like, I'm not a Sentinel guy. Like, I do a ton of stuff with the Defender stack, Azure AD, EMS, but to me, Sentinel, I'm aware of it, know what it does, but it kind of sits away from me because I get in, I set stuff up, and then I flee the scene of the crime, right?
Yeah.
Whereas it seems to me Sentinels for folks like you that are on that, the operations of an InfoSec. So as far as Sentinel goes, the first question that comes to my mind is, if I have something like 365 Defender, I get that advanced hunting capability, I get KQL. Do I need Sentinel? What's the kind of addition for, again, paying Microsoft more money? What do I get in return?
That's right. Someone at Microsoft, your account manager, we're very happy if you start playing with Sentinel for sure. So there's that. But advanced hunting is like a really amazing feature of, I'm not sure with the licensing, but once you get to a licensing tier that includes advanced hunting, you should absolutely get in there and have a look at the data that you get access to. If you've got 500 devices sending their telemetry, that is a whole lot of stuff. Like, you'd be surprised, these devices are reporting and they're chatty and they're telling you where they're at, and they're telling you what your users are doing. And just recently they've also added, if you're an Azure AD P2 customer, you can now look at the Azure AD sign-on logs, both for users and service principals. So they've added those to advanced hunting as well, and they're some of the most useful logs you'll find. So where Sentinel then goes is, Sentinel's great for all your other Microsoft stuff, plus any other non-Microsoft stuff you can get your hands on. So advanced hunting's really great, but really you're on the hook for what Microsoft provide in there, and they'll change and they'll add features all the time, and that's amazing. But it's almost like the step up is to Sentinel, right? So Sentinel's a full-blown SIEM, so you can send GitHub logs to it. You can send sysmon off your devices. If you do your third-party MFA, you mentioned Duo, or all that stuff can all go in there, and then you can start tracking your threats and how your data looks and trends and that across it all. So I know, Peter, you're really interested in your data governance and your stuff like that. So you could look at an example that you could do in Sentinel is information protection can send its logs there. If a user downgrades a file, the sensitivity label on it, then 5 minutes later emails it to their Gmail account, you could pick up things like that because you get the information protection alerts, you get email, even if you're using, if you're using Proofpoint or if you're using another one, you can put it all in there to one spot. It's obviously, in terms of an engine, it's a lot more powerful than advanced hunting. So it's quicker. It's built on top of the log analytics. So whatever log analytics can do on its own, it can do. So you can do the dashboarding, you can retain that data for how big's your checkbook, right? So advanced hunting, that data tails off after 30 days. And for like immediate threats, even 30 days is more than enough. 30 minutes at times you'd want to catch this stuff. But if you want to keep that data long term, then Sentinel's where you want to be. And I guess the other part to it is kind of the automation engine. And I think like Uru's, when you get pitched automation and AI and all this stuff in cybersecurity, like some of it's just complete snake oil, right? I think there's some stuff out there that's just ridiculous. Like, I don't think we're going to wake up tomorrow and the robots are going to be making all our decisions for us just yet. Every time I see a robot fail, it's like, yes, Skynet's kind of been delayed 5 more years. It's not quite time yet. So, but you can build some really easy automation that's unique to your environment in there. So you can leverage like Azure Logic apps and functions. So we do a lot of that. And when I think about automation, is I think what are humans bad at is that humans are bad at doing the same jobs over and over because we get bored. We cut corners and we're lazy, and we don't want to do that. We want to do the cool, fun stuff. But a Logic app's not going to get bored of you just doing the same thing over and over and over and over and over. So if you get like an identity alert from, if you use Azure AD, identity protection, which is another really cool product, when one of those flags, what's the first thing you do? Do you kind of check out where the user's been logging on from? Did they complete an MFA challenge recently? Is this a new country for them? Is it a new user agent? So you could use Sentinel to go and get all that data for you, right? And it can run the queries in the background and present it to you. And then you can do the stuff that humans are good at. And that is like ultimately making judgment calls based on what's unique to your customer, because what might be malicious for you may not be for me, and vice versa. But Sentinel can go and do it for you. Or you could just, what we do is if we get the high alerts for the high level alerts for identity protection, we actually just force our users to re-authenticate. So we'll revoke their session. They'll have to re-auth and MFA. It's not perfect, but it's a pretty good start, right? If they then go back in with an MFA challenge, there's a good chance that's a kind of a benign issue. So I think that's where Sentinel's just much stronger. You can obviously throw any data you want at it, and that's obviously a cost to that. But it's a very, very capable and strong and product. It's very quick as well with its queries. You can find what you're after in kind of seconds once you learn the language.
Yeah, it's the cost part that scares me a bit. How do you keep control of that? Is it easy enough to do? Can you set limits and alerts and that sort of thing to keep you honest with it?
Yeah, certainly. So you can set ingestion caps for sure. Obviously, the argument would be from a security point of view, do you want to miss out on the key data? But I get you right. You hear these horror stories of all kinds of scenes, whether it's Sentinel or the other products like a Splunk and things like that. You get like one machine just decides the event viewer just lights up, and you're just like, there's this bill, and it's you can certainly keep track of data. A few of the queries I've done in the 365 days is actually that kind of thing. So looking at how your data grows over time, day to day, it's like, oh, this one's risen 800%. Let's get in front of that kind of thing for sure. It also has a number of free tables that people may not be aware of. So those are definitely worth checking out. They're actually really useful ones too. Like sometimes the free stuff is like, yeah, it's cool, but it's is useless to me, but the free stuff in Sentinel is really good. So you get the Azure activity log, and that you can track anything in your Azure kind of infrastructure side. So, you know, a VM starting, stopping, someone adding a public IP to a virtual machine, that stuff's all free. You get the the Office activity log, which is a really, really useful one. So that's your Teams and your OneDrive and your SharePoint. So, you know, guest added to a team suddenly downloads 600 files, suddenly leaves the team, you know, things like that. That's free data. And then all your security alerts from your other Microsoft products. So your Defender for Office, Defender for Cloud Apps. I'm going to get the names wrong for sure. But anytime they trigger an alert within themselves, they actually write that to a table in Sentinel. And then you can have a look, you know, we're getting, you know, as one user getting kind of lit up here. So those ones are definitely worth checking out. And I think you get 90 days retention free in Sentinel. Just check on that. So, but yeah, you do need to be careful with it. But I think Microsoft provide some pretty great tools to keep on top of it. I don't, you know, it's all there if you want to find it. I don't think there's anything hidden. And I think that's really all you can ask for, as long as the data's there for you to make a sound decision on what you want to ingest, and if you're happy with the costs, that's really all you can ask for, right?
So would you say it's fair to say that Sentinel is something that is good at unifying all the signals across those other Microsoft products you just described, the Defender for Cloud Apps, and is that where the real value is, that it can bring all those together in one place? Yeah,
look, I think having all that data in one spot that's really what you're after, because advanced hunting can definitely do some of it. So you get some email events, but you don't get anything from Teams in there, for instance. As far as I know, last I checked, at least you don't get anything. You certainly don't get anything from Azure. And if you've got VMs, if you've got key vaults, if you've got things like this that are really privileged, you certainly want to keep an eye on it. So, and you can stream all the data from advanced hunting in, though that's not a free tier. So all your devices, like if you go down the Sentinel route, you can kind of entirely live in Sentinel, all your device events, and, you know, people changing the registry and all that can live in Sentinel as well. But yeah, big pain, big data pool. I've kind of, in the last 18 months, I feel like I've turned into like this low rent data scientist geek. But it's, I didn't see that kind of pivot happening for me a couple of years ago, that's for sure.
It's an interesting point though, because now you mention it, it doesn't seem like a million miles away, right? Because you're taking all the data, you're manipulating it into giving you what you want out of it, and then you're looking for strange patterns. And now that you mention it, that kind of sounds like what a data scientist would do.
Yeah, in a way, but again, with a real security focus. So often we're looking for, sometimes you're looking for single events, or sometimes you're looking for, you know, a user doing a few things in a row in a time span. And both advanced hunting and Sentinel, you know, they're really optimized for that kind of logging time data. So it's very easy to slice your data up into, you know, 15-minute chunks. So you might say, look, a user RDPing to a server, yeah, that's fine. But if they RDP to 10 in 30 minutes, that's probably not what we'd expect, right? So that's the kind of stuff you can drive, is using that time and kind of getting the trends and things in data, definitely.
So as far as then, so to get into like a specific example then, like, so if I'm querying and if I'm establishing an RDP session on premise, or I'm doing some kind of activity on my on-prem device or an on-prem server, how are you ingesting that data into Sentinel? Or are there agents that get deployed on servers? How does it scoop up that telemetry?
Yeah. So there's actually a heap of options, to be honest. If the machines are enrolled in Defender, it's super easy, right? So they're already sending that telemetry to Defender, and you can just enable the data connector between Sentinel and advanced hunting. It's like if you're a global admin and you've got access over Sentinel, tick the box, and that Microsoft will do the plumbing in the background for you, and obviously check your bill on that one if you've got lots of devices. But really easy, and all the Microsoft stuff, so Azure Active Directory and all those things, there's pre-canned data connectors set up in Sentinel. So you can just go through and tick the boxes, and it knows which tenant you belong to and things like that. And with an Azure Active Directory, you can choose just sign-on logs, or you can choose service principals or risk events. It's quite granular with what you want to choose, because sign-on logs are an interesting one. Is that regular sign-on logs aren't that noisy, but non-interactive sign-on logs kind of light the place on fire. You don't realize, but Teams is kind of connecting in the background all the time, just constantly. And you might, maybe you just don't care about those, and you can save yourself a bit of money. And then you can also use, there's a number of other agents. There's a log analytics agent, or the Microsoft monitoring agent, and you can pop that on a server and just point it to your workspace, so your Sentinel workspace, and choose kind of what tier of logging you want.
Right.
There's also a kind of an agent that's just kind of recently updated, and that's the Azure Monitor agent. That's like the natural evolution. You can plug that on there and do the same, or you can use native tools. You could use Windows event forwarding, and you can do sysmon, or you can send it up in kind of industry standard formats, so like a syslog or a CEF, and it kind of takes it in for you. If it's in an industry standard format, it'll kind of even clean the data up for you on the way in, which is really nice. But yeah, lots of options, which is a good thing, and that's how you can control what you ingest. You might not have the budget to ingest 500 servers, but if you've got 4 domain controllers, seems that might be the place you start. Get those tier 0 assets, get your Active Directory sync server, your AAD Connect, because that's it's effectively a domain controller with its privilege, and your Active Directory logs, you're gonna see a whole lot of cool stuff in there. I guarantee it.
Yeah, I've seen on Twitter recently. I can't remember who it was posted. It was something like that. On-prem Active Directory is just like this labyrinth monster that no one really can properly comprehend. There might be a couple of them out there, guys like Sean Meltcalf and all that, but your average Joe, your average on-prem AD, that thing ain't secured very well, is it?
Yeah, look, I know a bit. I feel like I only know a little bit about AD, but like the guys that started Bloodhound, and those guys know what they're talking about. This, like I said, it's like a niche in cybersecurity on its own. It's just unbelievable.
And it's crazy though, because it's so like omnipresent. It's everywhere, but it's like, how much control do we really have over it? And are the people that are in charge of running it, do they really have that competence? You know what I mean? Because it is serious stuff, quite frankly. We've seen over the last few years it really tearing down businesses when it gets compromised.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and it's also, look, it's showing its age, right? And it's hard to, it can be quite hard to delegate appropriate access through there to your service desk, or to people who you want them to do some stuff, like reset passwords or set up user accounts, whatever your use case is. They're very easy to grant too much privilege, and that's where something like Bloodhound shines, and you're like, oh, this user actually has a path to domain admin hidden in the kind of the plumbing and sewers of AD.
Yeah, because it's one of those things. It's not even just on-prem AD. I've even noticed in Azure AD, and companies like SendServer are trying to help with this problem. But just like the fact that so many things are governed by group membership, right? And it's not always so easy to see as you update that group membership, what's the domino effect here? What other resources am I giving them access to? What apps is it deploying? There's just so much that it's tied up in. And I guess on-prem, that's where stuff like Bloodhound comes in.
Yeah, definitely. I think, so Active Directory knows that domain admins is privileged, right? But it doesn't know that you've created like a group in your AD that holds all this privilege. And same in Azure Active Directory. It knows like a global admin is a privilege role, but you might have some group that grants admin access to your payroll system. And Azure Active Directory is like unaware of the privilege that comes along with that. It might be in the description, or just because you know about it. Obviously, something like Sentinel is fantastic for that, because you can monitor changes to the group, the object ID of the group. When you create a Azure AD group, you get an object ID that's immutable until you kind of kill it. So if you target your your queries at that group ID, then you can certainly get that that capability. And you've obviously got things like Azure AD privileged identity management, which is like I think it's a P2 feature. That's a really cool product for governing access to roles and groups, giving you that just-in-time access.
I love that so much. So powerful.
It's fantastic.
We've talked about a few products here. We've not mentioned one that's sprung to mind here. So we've talked about all the Defender for Cloud apps. We've talked about Sentinel and various other things. What about Azure Lighthouse? Is that something you've worked with, come across, or where does that fit into the picture?
Yeah, so being an internal IT team, we've not really had the use case for Lighthouse. But look, my understanding of Lighthouse is essentially it's a RBAC mechanism. It gives you the capability of kind of, you could have, I think like the use case could be is like you've got maybe a parent company with lots of subsidiaries and things like that. So you could have a Sentinel workspace or something like that, and then you could use Lighthouse to grant access into that workspace on maybe this particular table or these particular kind of resources in Azure and things like that. So it does look pretty neat. To be honest, it's not something we've come across just yet, but if we ever get into the mergers and acquisitions space, it's certainly interesting where maybe you're interested in getting access to their data, but you don't want to go down the route of like a old school Active Directory trust or things like that. So you can kind of, seems like a bit of an extension of the Azure AD B2B, right? Where you can, this is my corporate credentials and I can be granted access to, you could add me to either of your tenants. I still authenticate with my credentials. You're just kind of allowing me in and things like that. So it does look really neat though.
If I'm spinning up my first Sentinel instance, right? So I set up my workspace. I've got Sentinel now. Obviously, I can rely on you, and I can steal your 365 queries, and that's going to give me a whole bunch of useful stuff to monitor. But is Sentinel one of those things that it just will automatically throw in interesting alerts at me, or does it require a lot of bespoke tuning to get what you need out of it?
No, it definitely comes. There's a lot of really great kind of pre-canned queries in there for sure. So they provide you hunting queries, and that's just things you might want to run ad hoc. So it could be, key vault manipulation or users signing in from new countries and kind of all that stuff. So you can just click the button and it will run that against whatever data you have, and it tells you, you need Azure AD sign-on logs, but you don't have them enabled, so there's no real point running this query. And then the other capability they provide is like templated in Sentinel, and we call it analytics rules. And that's basically you've come up with a query or something you'd like alerting on, and Sentinel will then run it for you on whatever time period you like. So if you're looking for a user added to domain admins, you probably want to run that as often as possible, right? So you can run, I think you can run every 5 minutes looking at the last 5 minutes of data.
All right, wow. Because that's quite rapid then, because you can do a similar thing in advanced hunting, but top of my head, I think it's every half hour or 1 hour. So that's almost real time, basically.
Yeah, and just recently, I haven't had to play with them yet, but they've added, I think it's called near real-time rules as well, which is even faster on top, and I think it might be down to a couple of minutes. And with those, I think you're limited to kind of 30 or so for your tenant, so you use them wisely, I guess.
Right, yeah.
So, and we do a lot of those, which we're just looking for things, not always malicious, just user behavior. And you can look back, I think, up to 14 days of data with those rules, because some rules you might want to just run daily, looking at the last day of data.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not that instant stuff. You're looking at those trends or what's happened with your data over a bit of a longer period, for sure. And there's a heap of ones just out of the box that you can just click enable, and away they go. The documentation's really sound and really great for sure.
Right, gotcha. No, it's you've really piqued my interest in as far as that kind of near real time capability, because it's what's that show called where it's to do with, it's called The First 48 or something, and it's like in a missing persons case, the first 48 hours you have to get it sorted within there. And it's kind of the thing when I think of like APTs and domain compromise, right? It's that small window that you can get to shut it off right at the beginning. You can return from a compromise weeks and months down the line, but if you can nip it in the bud right at the beginning, that's what's most important.
Yeah, definitely. So look, when you read those reports, is that often these kind of ATPs are sitting there for a little while, and they kind of sit there and they are sending signals. So there are chances to catch them. From everything I read, the progress is kind of a little slower than you'd expect, I guess, compared to what you see in Hollywood. And you're like, it doesn't quite happen as fast. They can often sit there idling, waiting for an account that they can use to escalate and things like that. So, like you say, you pick that stuff up early, you get on top of it before it's a real disaster for sure.
Yep, good stuff. And so, taking a wee step back now, and I'm thinking about, it seems to be the general trend of a lot of folks is starting the help desk, end up specializing in something. Is that the same kind of path that you've followed? You mentioned earlier that on-prem AD was kind of your gateway into it. What's your story?
Yeah, so I guess it depends how far back you want to go. But my first real tech job, I guess, was actually an internet provider help desk. And it's kind of on the fringes of IT, but I loved it. Right, I loved helping people out. It was just kind of at the advent of ADSL when people getting broadband and all this. And look, I'll never begrudge a service desk person anywhere. Like it's the toughest job on the planet. So I'm always super patient, try to be helpful with those teams because I've done the time. And then I moved into kind of that regular kind of internal sysadmin role. So on-prem Exchange and Active Directory and Link back in the day and things like that. And then my pivot to cybersecurity, which I guess probably 5 or so years ago now, I guess, was actually going into a company to remediate the findings of a pen test. There was a lot of gaps in Active Directory, and they were just like basically a laundry list of, you need to fix this. And so they needed an Active Directory resource more than like a cybersecurity expert, someone that knew group policy and all this stuff. And then at the same time, they were going through a bit of an uplift, which is you need MFA, you need better phishing, you need all the stuff. And so I just kind of grabbed onto that and a bit of, fake it till you make it at the start, which I think you sometimes feel every day, regardless. But just loved it from day one, and it's
awesome.
It's definitely my niche. I love it.
Awesome. And are you kind of, obviously, I keep coming back to Sentinel, but do you fall into that little Microsoft bubble that we talk a lot about, or are you getting your hands dirty with all sorts of vendors?
So in terms of kind of the SIEM platform, really only Sentinel. We're a company that kind of picks and chooses with Microsoft products. So like I mentioned, we use Duo over Microsoft MFA, and we kind of, we use Microsoft sometimes we don't. We use some AWS, we use some GCP, we use some Azure, we kind of a bit of everything. So but I don't have experience in Splunk. I don't have experience in any other SIEM product. This is kind of my first shot at that, and I feel like I should have had a go 10 years ago. probably would have loved it, but so I really enjoy it. KQL is kind of, I don't know, it's kind of satisfying to write a query that visualizes what you thought was happening. I thought that was going on with this app or that user, and here's the evidence, for the jury.
Yeah, no, good point. And one of the things I like, again, not KQL expert, but one of the things I like about it is that it's so easy to read. Like I can, as someone that doesn't get involved with it every day, I can open one of your GitHubs and look at it and just kind of reading the code. I'm like, oh, well, it's obviously it does this because it's written in plain English for the most part.
I think it is. Look, I got to admit, when I first started looking at it, I didn't feel that way either. But I don't really come from I have no SQL experience. I was looking at it going, well, I know PowerShell, and this is not PowerShell. I can tell you that much. But there is it does make sense the way it flows. It also, if you have a query that's say 10 lines long, Sentinel or Advanced Hunting, like effectively runs it line by line. And that's how it just I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do that. So you can be like, oh, okay, I'm going to take 7 days of data, and then I'm going to look for this user, and then I'm going to look for them logging on to Microsoft Teams, and then I want to know what location, and it just runs it like a little program. So it does kind of make sense when once you've had a read of a few and written a few, there's kind of a natural flow to them that makes sense to me, definitely.
And has there anything? Have you ever tried to get it to produce something that you've like? What's been the most troublesome query you've had to come up with? Because I think back to when I first started kind of playing about with it, and you learn the basics like, well, if you're starting a query from scratch, make sure you're only querying a day's worth of data, so you don't pull back 50,000 rows and avoid disasters that way. So, what kind of troubles have you overcome while you've been going through it?
Yeah, so some of the hardest stuff to do is just about like data quality and consistency. And look, I think Microsoft's getting better with it. Plus, if you're then using logs from other vendors, so username in one source, maybe user principal name in another. One might be capital letters, one might be not capital letters, and like Sentinel and Advanced Hunting is very specific. If you say equals Matt Zorich, that's an exact match unless you tell it otherwise. So I think things like Active Directory logs is what you're after is often in the middle of some kind of garbage around the outside. So you've got to kind of you might have, event data, and you've got brackets, and you've got quotes, and you've got sometimes double quotes. And so kind of cleaning that data up. And like when I write the queries, I like it at the end to look nice and just be like, oh, kind of anyone with an IT background can see what's happening here and give my columns nice titles and things like that. So that's definitely the hardest bit. And I think the second hardest thing you'll learn is how to join a couple of different data sets. So
Agreed.
Joins in KQL can be difficult to get. There's like different types of joins, and I've got an email event and an information protection event, and what matches and how do I join them between the two, and those kind of things. Like, again, super satisfying when you get it, and really infuriating when you've kind of got that error message for the 50th time in 5 minutes. And you know how it is. It's like a PowerShell. It's like, why am I getting red again?
Yeah. I remember taking a database design course about 10 years ago, and to this day, I still couldn't tell you the difference between an inner join and an outer join. It's just, I'll Google it every time.
I have to look at the guidance more often than I'd like to. Maybe after another 220 days, I might have it more down pat. But yeah, it's bookmarked. It's like, what's this join do again?
Yeah. Good stuff. And so I guess as far as kind of life outside cybersecurity and all that, I'm seeing a Pearl Jam poster in the background.
Yeah.
Music
so that
guy?
was I love my music, or I always say I love all the music that I enjoyed when I was kind of 18 to 25. That's natural for anyone. But yeah, so those posters back before pre-kids, me and a friend basically went around Australia and kind of followed them.
Oh, cool.
That was in 2005, I'm going to say. And then they actually sat in a cupboard until we're all working from home the last couple of years. And I guess like you guys, suddenly you've got time to hang posters up, or build an office in the garden, or whatever floats your boat. So yeah, still love Pearl Jam and the Killers, and I'll listen to anything. Punk rock's really my kind of that's my bread and butter.
Nice.
Yeah,
nice.
Love it.
Yeah, and
absolutely love it.
Yeah, I got a couple of young families. I've got a 10-year-old and a 5-year-old. So they're at school just near where I live, and yeah, little family. They're super happy kids, and we love traveling, so we're keen on kind of getting back out there again when we can. Just pre-COVID, we kind of visited the US for a little bit, and I tacked on the last in-person Microsoft Ignite at the end, which was cool. So we're keen to get back over, and we've got some friends in London as well. Would love to kind of get back there again. And
cool.
Yeah, I love my basketball as well.
Basketball, awesome. What is the sort of situation in where you are now with COVID?
Yeah.
Are you opening up again, or?
So where I live in Western Australia in Perth, and we've actually been really kind of COVID's not really affected us at all.
Hmm.
We're like the most isolated city in the world, kind of where it's a 4-hour flight to Melbourne, to give you the
Wow.
scale of things. So we've got lots of desert between us and anything. We're just starting to pick up some cases now, but we've got a very like highly vaccinated population. So hopefully it's, we don't want to lose anyone, and it's probably inevitable. But I think in a couple of months, travel and things like that will be back on the cards. I think we're allowing international visitors back in a couple of weeks now without having any quarantine requirements and things like that. So really cool on get back to normality, much like you guys. I think we've been very fortunate in Australia. We're a very big island. We're a long way
really
from
big,
anyone.
really
I think
big,
that puts us in
Yeah.
we kind of started with this geographical advantage that we're very fortunate for. And so
yeah, you are a big island indeed. I had no idea of the scale really when you said there that it could 4 hours to fly from Perth to, what was it, Melbourne?
Melbourne, yeah,
Yeah,
it's
that's
just it's a
wow.
big place. And when people from Great Britain and it's just you're used to getting on you can take the train to Belgium in 90 minutes.
Oh yeah,
Drive
dead
90
easy.
minutes from my house, and you've kind of 25 hours more driving to the next city. So
Yeah, I mean, I love how small we are in the UK as an example. I mean, the worry is with all this climate change and storms and weather we've got. I don't know how we've not fallen into the North Sea by now, but but I love how easy it is to get places. I mean, if I wanted to pop up and see Roo in Scotland now from the northeast of England where I am, it's a couple of hours on the train. Same for me to get down to London, and as you say, from there down in London and pop through the Euro tunnel to France, Belgium, get onto the continent. So it's fantastic. But
there's definitely a different scale. We live down here, so our US trip was 20
and then when we
hours
talk,
flights.
yeah, when we talk to American guests and when we hear the scale of they think nothing about they're always on their road trips, aren't they? They'll think nothing about driving for days. To me, I don't want to drive any more than 2 hours. That's a long drive to me.
Especially my kids, I don't want to drive them to school some days. So and that's about 5 minutes.
I was thinking the same thing. It's like there's definitely a British tendency to think driving anything more than half an hour is just like horrific. Whereas you'll talk to folks in the States and they're driving 3 hours to get to work in the morning. Yeah. It's funny how you get so used to what you're used to, right?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Consultant life. I used to drive everywhere a few years ago, but probably 4 or 5 years ago now, I just got tired of driving and I decided I'm not going to do this anymore. And I just switched to the train. And as much as anything else, I can't stay awake very well. If I get so tired after an hour or so of driving, I'm finding myself drowsy, so you have to stop and the train.
I got to admit, I take the train to work when I do go in. It's about a 25-minute kind of train and then a little 20-minute walk, and it's bad Netflix for Matt time or MBA. The NBA is on at early time in the morning for me, so it's quite good to watch here. And that's my quiet time at kind of 6 in.
So basketball, I don't know much about basketball actually. What's your passion and your team in that? And
so I play basketball. I'm like kind of 6'3", so it helps if you're going to play basketball to be kind of my height. But I follow American basketball, and Miami Heat's my team. So we've had our moments. We're pretty competitive this year, so it's kind of heading up towards crunch time. We've got playoffs coming up and things like that. There might be some more work from home days with the other monitor tucked away there, and hope won't show anyone.
How do you how do you end up supporting Miami Heat? Because you're not in Miami. How do you
that's true
there?
Well, I think anyone that followed basketball and is kind of my age, which is like in their 30s, is like it was all about Michael Jordan, right? Yeah, you had to follow the Bulls. That's all there was. And then Michael Jordan retired, and then he retired again. And then everyone was like, well, "What now?" And so you kind of I think a lot of people picked a team at that point. And I kind of liked they had a player called Dwayne Wade, who I really loved, and then LeBron James came and played for us for a bit, which is always good when he comes and joins your team. It's you're guaranteed some success. So yeah, and then I just stuck with my team, right? So good or bad.
You've got to. Once you nail your colours to the mast, you can't change. It's the same with any sport, isn't it? Football or American football. It's just gets into your blood.
100%. Yeah, they might infuriate you at times, but they're almost part of the family.
Good stuff. Okay, so on that note, let's wind down. It's been awesome to finally meet you. Like I said before we jumped on the call, I talk to all these people on LinkedIn and Twitter all the time, but it's good to finally face to face, I guess.
Yeah, for sure.
We'll get you to Scotland
like
at some point.
Scrolling pictures on Twitter, and you're like, it's awesome to just go chat with these guys and see what you're up to, for sure. I love watching the show. It kind of comes on at 4 p.m. in the Arvos on Fridays, my time.
Oh, cool.
So it's, like I said, I find it very relaxing to just to kind of sit back and chill, and that kind of winds up the week for me. So it's been amazing being on. So I appreciate the invite for sure.
No, been great to have you, and learned a lot about Sentinel. And what I'll do is in the show notes and all that kind of stuff, I'll link to the GitHub, link to the blog, link to the Twitter, all that good stuff.
Yeah, that'd be great. Awesome. And if anyone, like I say, people reach out to me all the time if you want me to try and help you write something, and just go for me. I might steal it for the next day, but I'll definitely help you out.
Good stuff.
Awesome.
Cool.
Well,
this is the part that you do the best, Pete. So I'll let you.
Oh, okay. Let's do it then. So, thank you so much for all your support for the show. You can follow us on Twitter at CloudCons365. Please like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, which is at youtube.com/c/Cloud Conversations. If you do subscribe, you're helping us so much to grow the channel, to help us get more great guests on like Matt and expand what we do. We love hearing your feedback. We love talking to you and hearing your thoughts about the show. And we're excited to take it forward with our with some of our new features and our new format and our other hosts, Kat and now Azure. So let's wind this show up, though. And thank you so much again, Matt. It's been an absolute pleasure, as always, Rue. Good to be alongside you. And we shall see you next time on Cloud Conversations. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Cheers, folks. Bye.